What's going on, Bucs fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Pirate Parlay podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm your host, JC Allen, and tough sledding for the Buccaneers yesterday. They just couldn't get anything going consistently on offense. Big special teams blunders to start the game. And they fall to the Philadelphia Eagles by the score of 31-25. All the 3-1 on the season with a cross-country road trip coming up next week on the schedule against a well-rested Seattle Seahawks team who's coming off a mini bye. They're 3-1 themselves, so difficult matchup for the Buccaneers. What does it mean going forward? Could there be a time change? And what does this loss mean for the Bucs? Is it time? This is it doom and gloom time? Is it start to the world is falling? We'll get into all that and more with the special guests right after the break.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
Back on the other side, welcome again to the Pirate Parlay podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm your host, JC Allen. Before we get our guests in here, do me a favor, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. If you're watching on Twitter, retweet. If you're listening to a podcast form, appreciate you. Come check us out live sometime. Let's get into it. Let's get our guest in here. He is Tampa Tones from the Buccaneers podcast, one of my good buddies down here. Excited to have you on, Tones. How are we doing today?
Good. Usually you're feeling a little worse after a loss. I'm not feeling as bad after this loss. I think the boys went out there, fought, they played their tails off. And although it was ultimately an L, there's no such thing as moral victories. I was happy with how the guys came back battle after they could have easily rolled over out of the half.
Yeah, absolutely. You know it's going to be a tough matchup coming in against the defending Super Bowl champions who are undefeated. Battle of the undefeateds here in the NFC, two of the in my opinion, cream of the crop teams this season. And it just came down to, making a play and not making a play when it mattered. The Bucs got off to a slow start, 3-and-out, and it wasn't just a normal 3-and-out. Riley Dixon, for the second time this season, had a punt block. This time it was returned for a touchdown. So spotting the Eagles 7 points, and I know they blocked it. They had to block it. But spotting them 7 points to start the game was disastrous. And now you're already in the hole, and you got the ball first, so you don't even have that opportunity to be like, all right, if we can get some points on the board here, at least we get the ball back at halftime. And then they just struggled to find any consistency moving forward. It was a 3-and-out, with the blocked punt. It was, the next drive, it was a 3-and-out. Next drive, they got a first down, but, they were in the red zone and got Baker Mayfield got sacked. He, fumbles the ball, backs them up out of the red zone. They got to settle for a field goal. It was a slow start for the Buccaneers offense. They just couldn't seem to get anything going consistently. Does that worry you going forward? What were your thoughts, on the Buccaneers' slow start?
Well, the slow start and the red zone offense are two things that I am a little worried about thus far. Last year, red zone offense was one of the best in the National Football League. This year, we're near the bottom, if not at the complete bottom, in terms of turning red zone drives into touchdown scores. So that's something to keep an eye on. As you said, Baker Mayfield had a bad fumble there yesterday, moved it back, kept moving back. Slow starts are going to catch up with this team, and I think ultimately Todd Bowles did say that. Now, you are 3-1. They haven't hurt you yet besides yesterday. I'm very concerned with special teams and getting 3 kicks blocked in 3 weeks, and Riley Dixon isn't really showing signs of improvement. If anything, he's getting worse as the year goes on. So that has to be cleaned up, and I think that's part of the slow start problem is you're struggling out of the gates on special teams, and that just sets you back so much. When special teams is struggling to the degree that it is with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, that's going to cost you some football games. And now we just saw it yesterday, potentially, with that pump block costing us a football game. And not saying it's better to happen later in the game, but when that's how you start a football game, that's going to set the tempo a certain way the Bucs seemingly never really recovered. And JC, I think that's the difference between playing a team like the Eagles or maybe playing a team like the Texans or Jets, right? You could kind of get that slow start affordability with lesser competition. But when you're playing a team like the Eagles and you start in a deficit like you did, it's 10 times harder to climb out of that. Next week ain't going to be easy at Seattle. You can't afford a slow start like this. Who knows the time or place that might be played? I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But you got to clean it up, and you got to clean it up here quick. These slow starts can't happen forever. Against a bad team, sure, you could get away with it, but you got to clean things up. Red zone offense and special teams are two of the reasons why we're starting out so slow. These things have to be addressed today, if not tomorrow. Those are two of the big reasons why the Bucs are having such slow starts.
Yeah, I mean, if you dive into it, the special teams aspect's got to be better. There's the first games of the season, Chase McLaughlin, he misses a couple field goals, gets one blocked. Obviously, special teams, the return game is up and down. And then obviously Riley Dixon, it hasn't just been the block punts, it's been the shank punts as well. After he had his punt blocked his next time up, his next kick went for just 18 yards, shanked it out of bounds. It needs to be better. You cannot put yourself in field position situations like that where you're giving the opposing team short fields. And again, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? And it kind of, my son's team right now, we're winning on talent alone. You've got to do the little things right. And the Bucs have been able to out talent a lot of these teams before them. But when you go up against this next stretch this is their most difficult stretch of their schedule, Eagles, Seattle, 49ers, Detroit, and then you get the Saints. So, your toughest 4-game stretch right here, these slow starts, these special team blunders, these inefficient red zone. And to be honest with you too, Tones, third down offense has been complete shite the last 2 weeks as well. I mean, not that it was great the first 2 weeks, but 3-13 this week. I think it was 2 of 15 or 4 of 15 last week. The third down offense, which was one of their strengths, and the red zone offense, which was both of them one of their strengths, as you mentioned, last season, have been absolutely terrible and has contributed to the Buccaneers not sustaining drives and having to rely on their special teams more. And we're seeing where that gets them. So, you can get by some of these teams. You can have a crap day against the Saints and maybe beat them, but these next couple of weeks, they need to be on their P's and Q's, and they just haven't been on that. And, we saw, a big reason why the Buccaneers offense struggled was the loss of Mike Evans. Even though Chris Godwin was back and there was some rust there, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. But Mike Evans and the lack of him on the field has made a world of a difference in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and JC, one other thing, Godwin, yes, he was rusty, and yes, their third downs have been low, but to me that correlates as well. Godwin is Mr. Third Down for this Buccaneers offense. I know he missed a lot.
He had a big one yesterday.
Yep, later in the game he did, and that was one of his good plays. He also got held. It didn't get called once, but clear rust there. But yes, Mike Evans missing, and that's interesting with Grizzard, right? Because he was the third down specialist last year in college offense, so that's not trending in the right direction. I will say Godwin's return should help that. The healthier he gets should help that. But with Evans' loss, hopefully it's a couple weeks long and that number bumps back up in the right direction.
Yeah, because, Evans just does so much to dictate coverage. You just go back to that week 1 Atlanta game with Egbuka calling his own shot. And it was because of the coverage that Mike Evans dictated there. So not having him there is definitely a huge loss. Hopefully Chris Godwin can knock some of the rust off the rest of this week. And even with Egbuka and Godwin, those are two really strong players. But even Egbuka struggled a lot yesterday. He obviously, finished the day with 101 yards and a touchdown. But you take out that long of 77, he was just 3 of 3 catches on 9 targets for, I'm trying to do the math. You guys know I'm not good at this. 24 yards. So 3 of 9 for 24 yards outside of that big play that went for 77 yards. And same thing with Bucky Irving, went over 100 yards on the day for the first time in his career, but big 72-yarder. Without that, he's 4 of 4 for 30 yards. Yeah, they had a really difficult time moving the ball other than those 2 plays. Oh, and by the way, those weren't designed plays. They were broken plays that, Egbuka wasn't even the read. He was a clear out guy. And Baker just found him scrambling. And on Irving, he told Irving to take it down the field. It developed into what was a check down into a wheel route that he just hit, and Bucky made some magic. So, I think those things are concerning, right? Third downs. You knew people were going to give you extra attention with Mike Evans was out. And when you throw in the red zone woes, those are things that need to get fixed before they take on a well-rested Seattle team.
Yeah, they definitely need to get fixed, and several good points made there. And the environment's not going to help either. Yesterday, I know a lot of Eagles fans are there, but you're in Ray J as well. Now you're going to be in a place like Seattle, probably, but you're going to be in a place like Seattle, very tough elements, very hard to play there with the 12th man. The easier, quote unquote, easier things on offense even get more difficult in those situations. Bucky Irving going to have uphill sledding. Egbuka going to have uphill sledding. Egbuka, you expect those minor bumps here and there from a rookie mistakes, learning through it. Although, he did have one drop yesterday. I did think he could have brought in, which was on him. Bucky Irving, the explosiveness outside the broken play that resulted in a touchdown just hasn't been there like it was his rookie season. Now you might relate that to offensive line play. It was great to have Tristan Wirfs back yesterday. Charlie Heck still out there on the right side. Maybe when we get tight ends involved in the passing game more, when they don't have to block as much, maybe that will open up more in the check down game for a guy like Bucky. Maybe that will open up some over the middle type 8 to 10 yard slant routes for the Emeka Egbukas of the world. But the tight end on involvement, because of the blocks in particular, because of the O-line being down in particular, is really, something that hitches this team right now to me.
We're back. Technical difficulties. Yes, the tight end position, as you mentioned, they have contributed barely anything. And that's because of the offensive line. Now, Tristan Wirfs coming back, that was huge. You got to see the line kind of shift back into place. But even with the return of Tristan Wirfs, it was a struggle bus. Charlie Heck was like a turnstile over there. Look what he did, his best Caleb Benenoch impression on the right side over there. And Luke Haggard, he just isn't it. They need Michael Jordan to come back from that knee sprain, or Dan Feeney to get caught up to speed. One of those two guys. I understand. The original plan was to go with Elijah Klein at first, but then they made the change to Luke Haggard before the game. Not sure why they did that, but he struggled mightily going up against, especially in pass protection, going up against Jalen Carter. A little bit better in run protection, in runs and run fits, but Baker was running for his life. I'm love to see how much he was pressured, what the dropbacks were once PFF puts out how frequently he was pressured, because it seems like. And there's, we're not naive. There's things as Baker pressures, right? Baker sacks. But it didn't feel like that was the case. It just felt like the pocket was collapsing on him really quick. The Bucs really need, on the offensive side, really need Luke to come back. And it looks like the earliest, because he was put on IR, is against Detroit. So you're going to have to get through these next two games without him, which means, again, tight ends, specifically Cade Otton, is going to have to be left in and block a little bit more to help remedy that stuff. Same thing with Rachaad White. It's probably the reason why we haven't seen too many pony packages, because they just can't justify getting that guy out on the field, because they need someone to help chip with at the tackle spot. So the offense, it doesn't look like there's a clear path for them to rebound after this game going forward. But health along the offensive line, if they can get someone like Michael Jordan back, will go a long way, I think.
Yeah, and Michael Jordan's always tricky because he's on the practice squad, so he's never on the injury report. So it seems like his status is always a little underlying, but he is a big part to this team. We saw it the first 2 weeks. He played incredible football for this team, and he was likely to be signed to the active if it wasn't for his injury, given his gameplay. And yeah, shout out Feeney. Friend of my family's, actually grew up in this area. He's a good guy. And Baker really likes him. If you listen to the mic'd up Baker Mayfield, he was loving his mullet, loving his hairstyle. So it'd be great if he could get caught up. And I think that would do wonders for this offense, because even Charlie Heck is nice of a guy he is, he gives it his all out there. You can tell even on certain running plays, the gaps that seem to be wide open just evaporate so quickly. I thought a couple of times yesterday, Bucky Irvin could have made it to the next level. Then suddenly a guy like Cooper DeJean, who might get blocked by a Luke Gadecki if he's out there, or a different pole tackle or guard if they come around with a healthy
Right.
offensive line, they're just open to make the play. And that's something you really didn't see last year, whether it was the Bucs running backs making a miss or the swing offensive linemen handling their blocks. Just something that this Bucs offense is lacking thus far. And you see a result of Baker running for his life, and you see a result of these running backs not having big holes to move through, and it's leading to little yards per carry to this point.
Right. And Baker, for everything he hasn't been perfect either. He fumbles the ball for his third time this season. I brought it up last week on this podcast. I thought he's, MVP in the leading the race because of what he's been able to do those first 3 games. This game, he kind of put his team in danger a few times, obviously with a fumble that knocks them outside of the red zone, to screw up one red zone attempt they had. They had to settle for the 42-yard field goal as their first points of the game. They could have gotten the points there, already down 14-0. They have to settle for 3 because of the fumble. There was another play with the Bucs trying to get a little bit of creative and tricky with the flea flicker. Cooper DeJean, just an excellent play by him. Almost caught it, hits the ground, but that was a near interception. He had another near interception later on in the game that was dropped by Philly defender. And then, of course, he had the nail on the interception when they were down there in the red zone. And that, to me, was the more mind-boggling pick of the day. You're at the 11-yard line. It's 1st and 10. You can still get a first down. Nothing's there. He scrambles to his right, and then he tries to force a pass to Kate Otten, picked off by draft darling for a lot of Bucs fans. Jahad Campbell picks it off for the touchback interception. But on that play, you just got to be smarter with the ball there, man. You have to realize that we've got at least 4 plays or 3 plays left after this, potentially 7 if we can get the first down somehow and be in first and goal at the 1. You got to be smarter. You can't make that throw.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen Baker be great about this year, is being so smart with the football through 3.5 weeks there. And really, when you're at the red zone, the cusp of it, you just got to protect the ball. Even if you get 3 there, wouldn't have been ideal. You'd probably go for it on 4th down if the opportunity presents itself. First down, don't try and play hero ball. Take the couple yard loss of a sack if you need. Heck, throw it out of bounds. Worst comes to worst, you get a grounding. The Buccaneers could live with that. What you can't live with is Jihad Campbell getting the interception in that type of situation. And I get the ball was bad, and I'm not going to beat Baker up completely because, again, he was trying to make a play. He escaped from a broken down pocket. But at day's end, Baker, we love you, brother. Just be a little smarter with that football in that situation. The Bucs likely come away with a capacity of points and somehow and make it a closer game. And the thing is, against the Eagles, you cannot be doing those little things, right? Again, against the Jets, hey, maybe Baker scrambles or throws it there and does get a touchdown. Good for you. But against a team like the Eagles with guys like Cooper DeJean in that secondary, they're not going to let you live a pass like that down.
No. And I think, for the most part, the Bucs did a really good job at shutting down this Eagles offense. I mean, if you look at it, 14 of their 31 points came on Bucs blunders. Obviously, the blocked punt, and then the Bucky Irving fumble. You take those 14 points out due to turnovers, and I guess you can call a block punt a turnover on downs technically. Those are things you can't have because the Bucs defense, especially in the second half, played tremendously again. And they got bailed out a little bit by that safety play that the Eagles took at the end, running the ball, having their punter run the ball out of the end zone, resulted in negative 34 yards. So dropped them under 100 yards on the day, but still Saquon Barkley held to just 43 yards on 19 attempts, 2.3 yards per carry, one of his lowest averages of his career, getting that many carries. He did have the 6-yard touchdown that came off the Bucky Irving fumble. But Jalen Hurts, only 130 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. They both went to Dallas Goedert, both kind of little shuffle passes. He didn't do much. A.J. Brown held to 2 receptions and 7 yards on 9 targets. Didn't really do much. Devontae Smith had 2 big third down conversions. One of them went for 20 yards. The other went for 9 yards, but it shut him down. And Barkley only had 31 yards on 4 receptions too. They did not move the ball particularly well. The Buccaneers gave them good field position, again with that 18-yard shank, spotted them 7 points, and the fumble set them up with good field position as well. Vita Vea had 2 sacks in the game. There was some really sticky coverage by Benjamin Morrison and Zion McCollum, and some big hits by rookie Jacob Parrish coming in, dropping for a loss, and Hassan Reddick, I thought, had a really good game, although he left injured later in the game. Benjamin Morrison left in. We'll talk about injuries in a second, but I thought the defense did a really good job throughout the game, but especially in the second half.
Had their backs up against the wall against one of the most prolific offenses in this league. And as you alluded to, the Bucky fumble, which I thought if they would have ruled them down, they would have stuck with that call. That was a close call, but it was too hard to overturn, quite frankly. But regardless, this defense has been so good in the red zone this year. We saw it against Atlanta, how many times they made the Falcons try and score from within 5 yards. But again, teams like the Eagles are just built different. And I do want to say something. The Eagles are clearly afraid of the Bucs defense stopping the tush push. They pulled out 3 quote unquote different type quirky plays against the Buccaneers yesterday where they could have done the tush push in those type of situations. So I will say kudos to the Bucs for making the Eagles think about it and not just doing the tush push over and over again. Now that is going to open another can of worms for whoever plays the Eagles. You're going to have to that loop in the offense as well. So another wrinkle in the offense there for the Eagles, but you can't give teams like the Eagles the ball on the 50 or better. And again, Riley Dixon, pump blocks aside, evidently he has a problem with that in his career a little bit too, but the shank is unacceptable. And we even got lucky with the holding call after the shank, ended up not helping too much.
Yes.
The ball back 10 yards, but
that made a difference though, from being at almost a 50 to putting them on the 30, 37 or something like that. Huge difference from 47 to 37. You're at midfield and now you're not. Yeah, 48 to 38. Yeah,
that is a huge difference. So we just got to clean these things up. Again, I'm not going to hold it against Bucky. That was a tough one to tell if he was down or not, but still, those are plays that happen in football games. You can't make those plays, sadly. Yesterday, the Buccaneers made more of those boneheaded mistakes than the Eagles, and that's a direct result in why a team wins by, now, like you said, the safety, the yardage at 2 points, that was a little bit free cheese, but that's a difference in the Bucs winning by 3 or the Bucs losing by 6, the turnover in the red zone, the shank punt, the block punt, the Bucky Irvin fumble, giving the Eagles free things on a platter. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, those mistakes are what leads to you to lose games, especially when you're going up against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, you've been able to overcome it against teams like the Texans, against the Jets, against the Falcons, but this is different. And, I talked about this too. I felt like this was a game that the Bucs were going to be in. I felt like this was a game. I did Philly radio, I did national radio, I did my own podcast, and I felt like this was a game that the luck was going to run out. The magic was going to run out. Baker would have the opportunity at the end of the game. They just weren't going to be able to get it done this time. And again, if you followed along, I have them losing the next 2 games. So hold your breath. Again, I still have them 12-5 winning the Super Bowl. And those feelings don't change for me right now after this loss, especially the way they battled back. But it is just something that, especially with Mike and Luke out, they're going to really struggle to be able to move the football. And now, Tones, with the injuries mounting up on defense, we saw Hassan Reddick leave the game. We saw Jamel Dean leave the game. We saw Benjamin Morrison leave the game. We saw Greg Gaines leave the game. Tyke Smith was banged up as well. If those injuries start piling up, especially in the secondary, but on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be very difficult for the Buccaneers to continue to go out there and not just pull these come from behind wins but just to stay in it.
Yeah, and Jamel Dean sadly gets hurt all the time. You've seen him leave yesterday. He was playing as good as any cornerback was in football.
heck of play yesterday. He was playing on top yesterday.
Benjamin Morrison came in. We really didn't miss a beat. Then he gets banged up. You can notice when Greg Gaines went out, the young guys did step up. Shout out to the Elijah Roberts, Elijah Simmons. They've been playing some good football, but
Yes.
you can't overcome all of these injuries. And again, whether it's heat related, condition related, some of the aspects of these injuries, they're just piling up. The Reddick one was alarming because I thought he was playing well. You didn't see his name in the stat sheet a lot, but he was doing pretty good in coverage. I thought he was getting after Hurts a little bit. So that's a big loss if he can't go next week in Seattle. He's looked really athletic this year too. Obviously the D-backs are concerned, and Tyke did end up coming back, so that was a good sign, although, he was banged up. But Jamel Dean and Benjamin Morrison will be the big ones to keep an eye on for me, along with Greg Gaines, because the defensive line's already thin. And you saw that make a difference yesterday, right? How many times does Kalijah Cansey take double teams away from Vita Vea and it opens up Vita Vea? Yesterday, I know Vea had 2 sacks, but in the first half of the game, Vea really wasn't a difference maker. And that's because he got double teamed all the time. And the Bucs didn't have a proper interior defensive lineman to kind of take over the game. So
Right.
you're going to see that become big. And then Dean and Morrison, I really hope at least one of those guys can play next week. Hopefully both of them can. But if you're without 2 of them, that's going to be a big hill to overcome. Nothing against Parrish and the other young cats out there. I like the way they're playing ball. But the way Jamel Dean was playing, I feel good about him going up just with about any wide receiver in the National Football League at this time.
Yeah, he's been playing lights out this season. The coverage grades, everything supports it. Everything that the Buccaneers defenses, secondary as a whole, whether it's Zion on them or Dean on them, they have held their first 4 number 1 wide receivers they've gone against to extremely low numbers. Josh Capo's got a tweet up on X. Go check that out. Breaking down what they've been able to do. They've been on par with some of the best secondaries in the league this year. So it will be definitely a huge blow. We got a couple questions about Grizzard's play calling. Just kind of what your thoughts are on it. KGH for life says he feels like it's lacking creativity. Obtuse Angle says Grizzard has to design more sack formations and 3x1s. Cohen did a lot last year. And just kind of what do you think of his play calling overall? Where are you at with Grizzard?
I've been happy. I haven't been 100%. This guy's the real deal, sold on him forever. But I've been pretty happy and content with, given the Bucs injuries, given the nature of this offense. We have to remember they're pretty much taking the tight end out of the passing game right now, which creates a lot of mismatches and opportunities to be had in the defensive secondary for our wide receivers and our running backs out of the backfield. So as the season goes on, as we get healthier, as this line advances, we're going to see the vanilla-ness of the offense open up a little bit, in my opinion. And again, I don't think it's been great, but I think it's been pretty good. And yesterday, you had this offense, you had the red zone turnover that could have equated into 7 points right there. You could have had a 30-point offense a game out of these guys against the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday. Again, I know weeks 1 through 3 offensively were a little here and there, helter-skelter, but I don't think you could get as creative as you want to right now, given the injuries of this Bucs offense. I think when they get healthier, you're going to start seeing that. And I think you've seen Tez Johnson start getting involved yesterday. Maybe that's a sign of things to come as well. Now that Godwin's back, maybe they'll try and use Tez in a little bit more of those packages. But I think he's been fine. I mean, again, we're 3-1. We should have put up 30 points offensively against the defending Super Bowl champs with a very good defense yesterday. Baker Mayfield only has 1 turnover. Bucky had the 1 fumble, so we're playing turnover-free football. We got to remember we're not healthy at the offensive line, which does alter a lot of game plan for this Buccaneers team. Is it a little bit vanilla right now? Sure, but he's also a first-time NFL offensive coordinator, right? He's going to learn how to handle these situations, in my opinion, JC, much like we've seen Dave Canales and Liam Cohen mature over the past 2 seasons. I surely think throughout the bye week and beyond, we're going to continue to see Josh Grizzard evolve and advance as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think when you look at when he got the job, how much things have changed since he's really got the job. First of all, he didn't have Ibuka. Then he loses Wirfs. Then he loses Godwin. Now he loses Gedicke. Now he loses Moak. Now he loses Evans. I think there just has been so much that's piled up, and I think you can overcome some of these injuries, but at the same time, you don't have your full, cavalcade of weapons there. It changes the way that you want to call things up, especially as you mentioned, when you're not able to really use the tight ends because you need to use them for blocking situations. So I think the playbook will open up a little bit. I've been pleasantly surprised. I thought this week there were some things that I thought maybe could have done better. But I think for the most part, I don't really have too many qualms. He's finding a rhythm. He's getting into, what this offense does best, and having to adjust multiple times on the fly because of injuries, whether that's happening in game or going into game. It can change dramatically what you're trying to do as far as the playbook. Before we get out of here, we want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors here on the Pirate Parlay podcast, Huel. You guys need to check them out. They have so much, the complete meal kits, on the go drinks, powders, everything that makes healthy eating simple. You can try today with 15% off your purchase for new customers with my exclusive code SickBucks at huel.com/SickBucks. If you use my code to fill out the post checkout survey, it will help support the show. But like I said, guys, I've been taking these before our football games on the weekend. We won again, by the way, so we're 3-0 on the 4-0 on the season, 3-1. 4-1 overall with a non-divisional opponent loss, but they were D1, we were D2. But I've been taking them before as a meal replacement, and I'm good throughout the game. No hunger, no issues, anything like that. I've lost almost 50 pounds since January, in addition with Huel just being more active and all that stuff. So definitely check them out if you're looking to lose some LBs and get in better shape. We appreciate Huel. Before we get out of here, Tones, I want to ask you, going forward, what are you concerned about? What do you feel good about on both sides of the ball, especially heading into this matchup against the Seahawks?
Yeah, real quick tidbit against Seattle. The Mariners and Seahawks are both supposed to play Sunday, and their parking lots are a shared parking lot facility.
It's a parking lot party.
Yeah, which we've seen with the Rays and the Bucs this year, given the circumstances, create some delay of games on the baseball side. So that's something to keep an eye on. What's going to happen with the time of baseball, football, how that collides. So I'm concerned with that, not the Buccaneers team, but my concerns moving forward and my positives moving forward for this team, we're only going to get healthier. So which should equate to more success on the field, which should equate to good things offensively. Defense, I think Todd Bowles really did a great job making adjustments yesterday, and I think he's getting better each year at the head coaching position, whether it's his time management skills. I know he hired Beastline this year to help him with that. He's done a heck of a job, and I think his halftime adjustments have come a long way as well. So I'm thinking our coaching is really almost the best it's ever been under Todd Bowles, given the man himself, Todd Bowles, is learning and doing a great job. So I'm very satisfied, and I think we're going to have a great sustained success of evolution with our offense and our growing pains moving forward. I think this Bucs loss isn't something that will foreshadow more losses in the future. I think it's something to build on and get better at. One area of concern heading into Seattle, as we alluded to, is the health of our defensive back, is the health of our secondary. JSN is a really big weapon over there. Sam Darnold is doing Baker Mayfield type things with that offense. They have a very good dual running back tandem between Charbonneau and between Kenneth Walker over there in Seattle as well. JC, I don't know if you've seen, but their right guard is very exploitable. People have put that on videotape this past week after that Thursday night game. So I'm expecting the Bucs front seven to really have a big game, hopefully with the banged up secondary, try and take over that Seattle front, try and cause some Sam Darnold to make some Sam Darnoldisms of old and cause a couple turnovers and win this game. To me, that's a key. How does this Bucs front seven play against a Seattle offensive line that's not up to par? Could you make Sam Darnold make a couple mistakes like the Sam Darnold of old? If you do that, to me, you win in Seattle. you have a good Sunday. If Seattle has their way with you, you're not getting pressure. You're not stopping the run up front. You have a couple injuries in the secondary, whether they play or not. Could be a long day in Seattle. So go out there with your front seven, give it your best shot, get after Sam Darnold at quarterback.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really good. Todd Bowles is not getting enough love. I think he's done a phenomenal job this year, not just with adjustments, knowing when to go for it, getting his defense ready to go. I think he's done a great job this year coaching, getting the guys behind them, keeping them even keeled as well, even after those first 3 weeks. I think he's done a great job. Very, very impressed with Todd Bowles so far this season. Obtuse talks about the linebacking core. Yes, in coverage, I think there's been some issues, especially with Servacio Dennis and Levante just being 35-year-old linebacker. He just can't make the same plays. And that Elijah Arroyo matchup kind of makes me a little bit nervous. Goddard got both of the touchdowns. If they can figure out how to use those backs in space like some of the teams before them did, like the Texans and like the Falcons, and get those tight ends involved, it could be a long day. But I will say this, Servacio Dennis has been elite against the run this season.
Mm-hmm.
Elite. He struggled in pass coverage sometimes, and there was a big play, Devontae Smith's 20-yard grab. Smith shouldn't be in coverage against Devontae Smith, to be honest with you. So, maybe make the play, but maybe don't put him in that position. I think he's done excellent. So lots of things to get better, lots of things to improve on. Questionable start time, I guess, for the Bucs this weekend. We'll see how that goes, if they're forced to move or if the MLB moves the Mariners to a late night game. But that'll be something to watch. Tones, thank you so much for coming on here. Go ahead, promote where everyone can catch your awesome content week in and week out. I think today you've got locker room talk, right?
Yeah, always a pleasure being on this great show with the great JCL, and always a fun time, one of the best in the biz, so I appreciate the opportunity. You can catch us at the Buccateers podcast. It's like Buccaneers, but substitute the N for the T. Today we have Man Cave Monday, all things memorabilia talk, actually. So for those interested in getting into game used jersey collecting, for finding out more about cards, mini helmets, memorabilia, you ever catch gloves at a game, you ever catch a headband at a game, and you're thinking, what do I do with this item? What's the value of it? Come join us on Mondays at 6 Eastern. We'll be there. Then we have Tune Me Up Tuesdays. We have Saturday Showdown Saturdays, Toe in the Line, Campus Kickoff, and more. We have 5 shows a week right now. Really excited. And JC, you're always welcomed on, brother. You know that. Once again, thanks for having me. You guys can find me at Tampa Tones on Twitter X, and Instagram, wherever you may find me.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Tones. That's going to do it for us here at the Pirate Parlay podcast on the Sick Podcast Network, with a little post-game recap show. We'll be back on Wednesday at 7 unless we get rained out of practice and I got to figure out another day to do it. Just to let you guys know, that's why my podcasts haven't been consistent at 7 p.m. on Wednesdays, because we'll get rained out of practice for Pop Warner football on a Monday or Tuesday. We'll have to make up the practice on Wednesday. That's why we're doing. Some will be at noon, some will be. But if we don't get rained out, we'll be here 7 p.m. to talk all things Bucs as they head and look at the matchup with the Seattle Seahawks a little bit more, and also figure out what's going on with these injury situations, because there's a bunch going on. That's going to do it for us here at the Pirate Parlay Podcast, Sick Podcast Network. I'm JC Allen. Like, subscribe, turn notifications. Everyone listen to podcast form. Appreciate y'all too. We're out of here. Peace out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.